Okay, you can start. You're on mute, Sumil.
Sorry. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mysore MuleSoft Meetup group, which is happening today. And we are going to cover the single sign-on via identity management, the configuration, which we are going to cover. So,
Vijay,
okay.
move to the mic.
Yeah. So the organizers for this MuleSoft Meetup group are Shubham Chaurasia, who is a pro integration developer from Millennium, and we have Giridhar Meka, who is senior technology architect from Hashin company, and we have Priya Shaw from LTI Mindtree, who is a senior software specialist. So today we have Vijay, who is our speaker. So Vijay, would you like to introduce yourself, and then maybe you can
Yeah,
take over?
sure. Thanks, Samil. Yeah, hello everyone. And so this is Vijay Raghavan Venkatatri. So I'm a technical manager and integration architect at Ernst and GDS. So I'm having 13 plus years of industry experience in integration and API products, in terms of solutioning, designs, and deliveries. And also, like I've been, chosen as a top 2024 MuleSoft mentor, and I'm a certified integration and platform architect in MuleSoft. So, and I have 4x certified in MuleSoft and 6x certified in IBM. And yep, and I'm just coming back to Mysore meetup group after a long time. So I think this is my fifth or sixth meetup as a speaker. So yeah, I'm planning to continue to do so for this year, upcoming years as well. Yeah, that's a quick introduction about me. So
Thank you.
if good, I think. Can I, go to my screen space, Somil, so that I
Yeah,
can?
sure. So
No.
everyone, if you have any question, you can post it over chat on use a raise hand button, so that we can take it in between. So thank you. I'll stop sharing, and Vijay, you can take over.
Thank you so much. So let me. I believe my screen is visible.
Yes. Can you just hide that pop-up below?
Sure. Yep. So today's agenda is on single sign-on, and these are the agenda what we are gonna see. What are the SSO standards we have, and how what is the high-level difference between the OpenID Connect and the SAML 2.0, and we see the high-level architecture on the OpenID Connect, and then we have one quick demo using OpenID Connect. Just configuring the SSO in MuleSoft Anypoint platform, and then we jump on to SAML 2.0 architecture. Also, we'll see one quick demo like how we can configure a SAML based SSO in MuleSoft Anypoint platform, and the final one would be on like how we can map the groups from the identity provider with Anypoint team, so the corresponding privileges are auto enabled for the users who are going through the SSO. So these are the pretty much agenda for the day. So let me just jump on. Yeah. So coming to single, I would say that this becomes a day-to-day activity or day-to-day acquaintance for the people who's be like kind of technical or non-technical. It doesn't matter, right? So I would say like if you step back a decade, right? The single sign-on is not widely used, but now if you see the single sign-on is globally accepted, and it has been like you cannot even see any be it a social platform, or it would be in any enterprise organization. You cannot see any application that is running without single sign-on. Ideally it will be like one or two cases you would see, but it is kind of globally accepted one. So what is ideal single sign-on? So we shortly called as SSO, and it is kind of a social and enterprise solution session and user authentication service. So ideally, it will enable or it will facilitate the user to access multiple application with a common credential. So if you think about the day before the day before the SSO got evolved, right? So it's ideally like we have multiple application get into to log into that particular system. So we kind of maintain a individual credentials for those applications, and you have to create and register for that, and then you have to log in it. If you just think back of 10 or 15 years back, even when you are kind of interacting with the social entities, right? Social platform entities. It could be Orkut, or probably the Orkut people. I'm not sure. Maybe probably the 90s and 80s people would be aware of the Orkut people. So even by that time, the SSO is kind of minimalized version. So it's not fully available. So it's like whatever the applications was available by that time, we had to kind of log into the each system. We have to kind of register, and we have to create an individual credential for that system, and and we have to kind of log in. It could be a web-based application, it could be a standalone native application, be it anything. And when SSO been in a kind of evolved, so it kind of simplify the process of signing in, right? So authorization server, which we call the identity provider, which takes care of this authentication, and providing a delegated authority for the particular user to access the other application, right? So this kind of feature that has been enabled part of SSO. And this SSO is kind of enforced by the identity management. So it's kind of a federated one, what we call it as, right? So identity management is the one where this SSO being managed, and the component that is being managed, kind of managing this identity management, so which we call identity providers. Okay. And that enforces the SSO standards. And through this SSO, this IDP provides the delegated authorization to the applications on behalf of the user. And we if we take the current example, right, we have a social SSO. So as in say social SSO, like you can log into sign up to Facebook or Instagram with your just Google account, or even you can log into a LinkedIn with your Google account. So this is a concept single sign on. So I'm going to get into an application with the existing user credential that I already have it in the other authorization server. So which kind of integrate and let you to log into the systems, and those the claims which we call, which is the end user information, will be shared to the corresponding the service provider. So for example, Google is my identity provider. Google itself, it's kind of a a system which has an identity provider. So when you say that it's going to be identity provider, it is going to handle my credentials, and it is going to manage my authentication and authorization. And when I wanted to sign up to LinkedIn, so instead of me creating separate credentials in LinkedIn in-house authentication server, I would rather just ask to enable the SSO, and through the Gmail login I would be able to share my information to LinkedIn, and my profile is created. So this is how this SSO is kind of minimalizing this login process, and it is more seamless in a way that users are able to easily get into the systems. And moreover, the social platform, that is very much important when it comes to enterprise. Okay, because in enterprises we might be having a lot of applications for the users to access. It could be a initial starting from the Outlook access to the in-house application system. And when a user is onboarded on enterprise, right, so they should not be getting an individual credential for each of the applications. Ideally, it should be driven through an SSO concept, and there should be a common authentication server should take care of all these things. So that's pretty much a single sign-on. And we see, like, what is the kind of advantage and disadvantages. See, when initially single sign-on started, there are little disadvantages that, but over the period of time, most of the things are being rectified, and it's kind of is ongoing. It's kind of evolving one, and it's become more secure. So ideally, if you look at the advantages, yes, we have a very simplified password management. I just need to remember one set of credential that is being handled by the identity provider, and using that I will be able to access all sort of application within the enterprise. And then it is kind of provide the increased admin control for the people who are handling this IAM. And then it's good without saying that it's efficient in sign-in processes. And then it's improved security over cyber attacks like phishing and all this. It's reduced high level. And then especially this point I really like, in terms of the reduced password fatigue, because I'm very poor in terms of maintaining the password. So it's very easy for me to, like, have one password in terms of of accessing multiple applications, it makes my job easy. If I forget the password, I have to go to the corresponding central help desk team to reset the password or unlock my account. So if it's being a single credential, it would be more easy for the help desk team to manage it. So there are a variety of advantages also we see from the SSO. But still, when it comes to disadvantages, definitely it requires an IDP. Okay, IDP as in IDP, we generally term it as a identity provider, but could be any authorization server. For example, if the particular enterprise buys the license of Microsoft Office, right, the Microsoft Office itself a resource server as well as authorization server, which handles internal identity provider, so which can facilitate your SSO login to other enterprise applications as well. Okay, so ideally any enterprise that goes for SSO, they need to have a budget for procuring the identity provider. That can be considered as a disadvantage for the very small scale enterprises, but it's mandatory for any medium or large scale enterprises. And then it's ideally kind of limited to web apps. It could be a server side application, and then since it's going to be a single a credential, you should have a very strong password. Okay, combination of alphanumerical characters, special characters, and the length of the password should be higher. So that is something to be taken care by each user. And then SSO config plugin should be supported by in-house applications. So for example, there are in enterprises, so there will be some in-house application they develop, but they have to create a feature to support the SSO configuration, which is as in that they should be having this identity provider configuration. So when a user want to log into the application, so it will reroute to that corresponding identity provider. That identity provider will authenticate the user and provide the delegated access to the user back to the system. So this features should be required in the in-house applications. And then if at all SSO is compromised, then all the applications are open to attack. So these are the advantages and disadvantages. So let's move to SSO standards. So currently, I would say the widely used SSO standards there are two. One is OpenID Connect and another one is SAML 2.0. So OpenID Connect is a extension of the OAuth 2.0, which is open authorization, and the SAML is a security assertion markup language. And we'll see this in detail in the upcoming slides. So these protocols are designed to authenticate users and provide user identity data to access control, and it's a kind of a communication method for the user identity. And when it comes to a platform admin, it's ideally choosing a SAML over OpenID Connect or OpenID Connect over SAML. It purely depends on the choice. Okay, it could be based on the security policies what they have in the enterprise, or it based on their enterprise applications as well. So both are widely used, so it depends on which one they're going to take it. Okay, uh, if you take a high level differentiation between the SAML and OpenID Connect, so it's kind of a pioneer protocol. I would say it's a mature technology. Like, so it is being used from 2005 by both enterprise and government applications, and it has a long track of record in terms of secure means of identity data exchange. Also, it has a great feature in terms of identity requirements. When it comes to OpenID Connect, it's a new protocol. It's kind of extension of the open authorization 2.0, and it's still kind of continuously evolving. Okay, in terms of feature, compared to SAML, it is having lesser version. But however, the key part here is more attractive and easier to use, and it is not as heavyweight as SAML, because SAML is based on the XML protocol, and it is just a lightweight one. It doesn't need an XML protocol to handle this OpenID Connect. So it ideally uses the REST standard in terms of interacting between the identity provider and service provider. So this is a high level difference between the OpenID Connect and SAML 2.0. So let's go into OpenID Connect architecture. So as I already mentioned, this OpenID Connect, or we can shortly call as OIDC, is an, as I mentioned, it's an identity authentication protocol. It's an extension of the OAuth 2.0. If you take a OAuth 2.0, it is a standardized of process for authenticating and authorizing user. So what is authentication? So it's ideally like you're going to verify a user that to say that who they say they are, right? And authorization is some it's a point of what kind of access is required for the particular user. Okay, the user is authenticated, yes, he's a valid user, but is he going to be accepted to access all the resources that is available in the service provider? No. So what kind of access to be provided, that is going to be part of the authorization. So this is being handled in the OAuth. Okay, so when it come to OpenID Connect, so the OpenID Connect is kind of built on top of it. So it is kind of mainly required for the single sign-on functionality. Okay, as in the single sign-on functionality, the application which is kind of using a single sign-on, they should be knowing the end user information as well. Okay, it is not just providing access, but they want to know it. Okay, because as I mentioned, right, I don't have a profile in the LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn doesn't know about my information, about my name, email, nothing, right? But these information profiles are already available in another system called Google. So I am letting LinkedIn to get those information from Google, but still the authentication, delegating authorization, all this still lies with Google. But Google will share that end user information as a, through the kind of ID token, part of this OIDC, and that information will be part of the token, and it will revalidate with the corresponding identity provider, and that information will be kind of popped up. So that's how your profile is created in your LinkedIn. So where you could be seeing that your name and first name, last name, email, everything being created on top of it. You're because you haven't signed up manually, where you're keying in your names and email, everything, right? So it's just being taken from the service identity provider itself. So this is how this open id connects works. And the components, when you compare between the OS 2.1 OIDC, the components are having different nomenclatures, but today we are just going to only focus on OIDC, how things are working now. So let's see, there are, for now, just consider there are four key important parameters. So one is on the user. So the user is the one, like who is going to seek access to the application without providing the credential. Let's consider that you're going to let's take, for this session we are talking about MuleSoft, right? So let's say I want to get access to MuleSoft. Okay, so I'm the user, I want to get access to MuleSoft, but I'm not going to do a manual sign up in that. So that is a key role of it. And that's a relaying party, the application to use to to use the OpenID providers to authenticate the user and using the token. So which means the relaying party here is a MuleSoft Anypoint platform. Okay, so which is going to talk to OpenID provider. So in this demo, we are going to use the Okta, very famous identity provider. So to get the authentication information and the profile information as well, in order to build up a profile for me, and it going forward I'll be using that in order to log into it. So that is a relaying party. So relaying party is a MuleSoft independent platform. And the OpenID providers here, as I mentioned, we are is a one, like who already has the user account and information, and which will kind of pass the information to relaying party using the tokens. So that is the OpenID provider, and which is the Okta for now. And the ID token that I mentioned, the ID token will be passed from the OpenID provider to the relaying party. So that ID token will have the information of the user, and this will be revalidated with the OpenID provider itself. So just let's take a look on the high level architecture, how it really works. Okay, so consider you are on a browser and you are going to log in into any point, anypoint.mulesoft.com. Okay, you just need to log in. So which means in a browser, be it a Safari or a Chrome, I'm just going to request a resource. So what it does is, so I have configured this SSO in MuleSoft, which means that I am having a Okta, like which is my identity provider. And this, I know, as a user, I'm already holding an account in Okta. So what happens here is, this MuleSoft will kind of send back an authorization code back to browser. So ideally this browser is kind of intermediate here. It's again going to redirect, so that will be kind of redirect URL back to OIDC provider. So which means, so through the browser, this HTTP redirect will happen, so which will be containing the authorization endpoint of that, and then with the scope information. Okay, so now what this Okta will do is, it will get me to the sign in page, where I'm just going to key in my user ID and password. And also it will ask me that concern that, okay, MuleSoft independent platform requires your information. So I'm just going to confirm my consent. So once the consent is done, then what it does is, it's just going to send the authorization code in the response. Okay, this authorization code will be sent back through the callback URL. So this callback URL of a MuleSoft will be configured in the Okta. So it will be sent back. Once it's sent back the through browser, so it's kind of again a redirect call. So it receives the auth code. Now the second stage is initiated. Now what it does is, now it will request the access token. So how it is going to request access token is, it just uses the same auth code that has been received from the identity provider, and then it will also pass the credentials that is being kind of, it's a system to system, kind of server side configuration. So the client ID, client secret are, created for Anypoint platform from Okta. So those information also will be sent part of this request, requesting for access token. So this is called token endpoint. And then in return, Okta will validate the client ID credential, also the authorization code that you have sent, and it will generate a access and refresh token and ID token. So you have to consider difference between the access and the, ID token. So access token is a short living token. Okay, so which will be used by the relaying party, or the browser, or I would say that, the browser to use this token to access the resources by in terms of the, on behalf of the user. And this will be a short lived one. In case if the access token is kind of expired, the relaying party will directly use the refresh token. So the refresh token will be the long lived one, so which will just talk to the OIDC provider and get the new token out of it. So that is a pair, which is access and refresh token is a pair. And then on top of it you will the ID token. So this is ID token, it will contain the, authenticated and encrypted information of the end user. Okay, so as I mentioned, the profile information of the user, be it my first name, last name, everything. So that will be part of the ID token. So after that, it will use a, user info endpoint, like relaying party will use a user info endpoint to check the, validity of the, same end user. So it will just pass in back the, pass in the access token and get the user information. So it will respond to the user information. So what it does is it kind of validate the access token and it will prepare a claim. So claim is nothing but a piece of information about the end user. Okay, so what it does is now it will validate the matches, the claim that is received versus the ID token it has. Okay, it kind of confirms that, okay, this user information that is being provided by the identity provider is valid. So I'm going to let this user to access my resources. So and then it's you kind of redirect the, resources back to the user via browser, and they will start accessing it. So this is the, architecture of the OIDC. So let me just go to a demo.
By the way, if anyone is having any questions, so maybe you can ask or post it on the chat.
Okay, so first what we are going to do is we are going to, configure the IDP in the Anypoint platform. Also we have to do a configuration at the, identity provider as well. So first let me log in with my admin account. So I already have an admin account. Okay, so this is my admin account, so I have the full access. And this admin account is part of the Anypoint provider, IDPs, because Anypoint platform itself is having its own, identity provider. So this admin account is created part of it. So currently, I'm the root org admin, so I have all the access. So now as a step, also I need to go into Okta. Okay. Okay, so now I am inside the Okta. So as a first step, right? So this is my identity provider site. Okay, so if you go, when you want to configure the SSO in Anypoint platform, so first you have to go to the access management. Let's see what are the, the initial steps here. So when you go to access management, you have the identity provider section. You have to click it, and when you're going to need to add the identity provider, right? So you kind of add this, you have to get, so currently we are going to talk about the OpenID Connect, so which I'm going to click it. So here you could see the list of items, right? So I have to give the name, and then there are registration process. So we are to, in this session we are going to use a manual registration with the IDP, and then we have to configure the issuer URL, and then the authorizer URL, token URL, user info URL. Probably if you see the name, this URL thing, you would be kind of correlating from the diagram what you have seen from the slide, like the authentication endpoint, token endpoint, user endpoint. These are the IDP information. Okay, and also the attribute information which we'll be seeing in the advanced settings in terms of uh, what we are going to pass. But now with respect to OIDC, we are just going to configure these things. So before we do that, right, first we have to configure, get the initial information. So when you go to the Okta, you have to go to the security API. So by default there will be authorization server will be available, or you can create your one, but for now we'll use the default one. Okay, first we'll get the metadata information out of it. So when you click it, you will be seeing it here. So this is the OAuth server information, not the OIDC information. Okay, when you click here, so you get the information about this OAuth. So it will not have a couple of metadata, but what we are looking for is a OpenID connect information. So for that, we just need to change this URL to OpenID configuration, just to change the URL here. And once you get it, you get this information. So let me just copy this down. So these are all the authorization information, you know, that I'm having from the IDP. Now, what I'm going to do is, currently I'm already having a user. Okay, so let's try to create SSO for it. So if I go to directory, this is my user information. Okay, this is my first name and last name. This is my email ID. So already I'm a user here. Now I need to create a identity, right? So as I say, identity. So let me create a first application. So this is application, you know which is going to enforce this IDP, because this application, whatever I'm going to create, it will be closely associated with the configuration that I'm going to create here. Okay, so first let's create the application here. Okay, when I click the application, it will ask me what type of the standards you're gonna. So I'm gonna say this OpenID Connect, and there are application type. So based on your recommend, you have to choose. So currently we are talking about server side application, which is the MuleSoft Mysore platform, and then I'm going to name it as Anypoint Anypoint Okta OIDC. Okay, and as I said, we are going to manual registration, so we have to generate a client credentials, and then so this is a redirect callback URL, which means once MuleSoft sends the authorization, when invokes authorization endpoint, this will kind of call back a scenario in terms of give the authorization code. So that authorization code is further used in terms of further API calls, in terms of the token endpoint call, or it could be a user info endpoint call. So those are then so for that, the IDP has to send the authorization code back to Anypoint platform. So this one we will configure, but as of now we'll just leave as it is. Okay, because it has to be taken from the Anypoint platform configuration. So that will be done only after we complete the configuration, and then we also leave this things as it is. And the next step would be, we say allow everyone in your organization to access it. For now we'll give a blanket access, just say for a while. Now we'll just copy this client ID, and then we'll copy the client secret as well. Now we will get back to here, right? So as the first one, I'm going to say that it would be Okta IDP OIDC. This is the name of the configuration that I'm providing within the Anypoint platform. So let me copy the client ID, client secret that I taken from the Okta. and let me copy the URLs that I got it from the authorization server. So let me first copy the issuer URL and the authorization endpoint, token endpoint, and the user info. So I'm just going to leave the rest of things as it is for now. So let me save changes. So the configuration is done. Now I'm just going to copy the callback URL of this endpoint, which is this one. So if you take a look on this, so it will be having the information of the provider. Okay, it's a kind of redirect URL. So it's kind of a callback that is being made from IDP back to Anypoint platform to provide the authorization code. So I'm just going to configure back in the Okta configuration. So I'm just coming back to the same application here. So in this, I'm just going to general settings. So this is a sign in URL. So this is where I'm just configure it. Also the initiate login URL. You have to configure this here and click save. So this is done. So we have done the configuration. uh, Ideally once you create this kind of SSO application, right, in terms of beta OpenID kind of SAML, so you have to associate the corresponding user or the group. Okay, so by default for OIDC, Okta provides a feature that your user will be auto kind of an auto assigned. Okay, you need not to explicitly assign it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to test this. Let me just log out of this. Now we need to we need the domain URL. Okay, so there are two ways to have a domain URL. So I already took the domain URL from here, or the other way is you can click this use custom domain, and the domain that I've created is this one, Mysore Meetup -9. So which will take me to the page. So now it will ask me, so whether you want to go with the sign in or SSO, or you are going to use the individual credential to log in. So now I'm just going to say that, okay, let me go with the Okta IDP OIDC. You see, so once I do it, I am with the credential that I had in the Okta, using that I'm able to get into the Anypoint platform. Okay, so this is how the SSO done. So if I just go and check the other resources, like for example, let me try to access runtime manager. I will not be having access. It just provided me only the kind of authenticated access, and then it will also provide me the basic information to the Anypoint platform about my profile. So which you can see that my first name, last name, email have been populated, because I haven't provided this information in the Anypoint platform. It's all taken from the Okta itself. That is the reason we are talking about these informations are kind of like ID tokens will have this information, like which will be passed on back to the service provider, and which will cross verify to the identity provider, and then after the verification it will create a profile and let me log into the resources. But however, though it is authenticating me inside, but it doesn't provide me any access to any of the component. Okay, there are two ways of doing it. The for kind of a usual manual way is that the admin can just go into the access management and can provide the necessary permission for the end user, or it could be the other way around, that the user can be like mapped to a team, and the team will have sufficient privileges. So that we will see it in the upcoming sessions. Okay, upcoming slides as well. So as of now, just understand this how this OpenID Connect works. So what I will do is, as of now, I'll just remove everything. So first, let me just go, log into with the admin account. So let me remove this configuration from both the service, the relaying party as well as the identity provider. Since it is auto authenticated, the user will be auto added here. So let me delete this user, and then let me go to the identity provider. So this is done. Now come back to Okta. So let me remove this configuration as well. This is done. Okay, the reason I just removed is next we are going to see the SAML authentication. So just want to not get confused about the configuration. That is I'm just removing and doing it as from the beginning. Okay, so now just get into the SAML. So before I get to SAML, if there are any questions I can answer.
Yeah, we have one question from Kishore. So for all the user created in Okta, will make use of same application created for SSO login.
Yeah, see, ideally we can have there would be multiple SSO is possible. Okay, it's all about the configuration that identity provider is going to have. For example, the same Okta, because for example, let's consider, right, from MuleSoft Anypoint platform, I need only set of people who need to access, right? So they would be kind of because the enterprise will have variety of people. Okay, only the people who are supposed to work on the Anypoint platform, I have to provide the access, not for everyone. So for that, we can create a group, and we can kind of associate those set of user to the group, and only the user will be kind of the group will be assigned to the corresponding profile application. So those applications will be like kind of initiated from that point. As in, like I'm saying that you can restrict in terms of groups. Okay, so that's what we are going to show in the see in the next slide, like how the particular group will be mapped in the service provider, so that you don't need to do anything from the endpoint platform. You can just create the groups. I mean, you can create the teams with the necessary permission. You need not to add the users manually to the teams. It will be auto mapped through this identity provider. So that we will see it through. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, any other questions? Yeah, I think we're good to move ahead.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is SAML 2.0 architecture, right? So as I mentioned, it is a very mature protocol, and it is being dated for past couple of decades. And so what we call it is a security assertion markup language. Okay, it is based out of XML based protocol, and it is kind of like uses a security tokens, which we call it as an assertion. Okay, so that will be passed between the SAML authority and a SAML consumer. So when we say SAML authority, you see this jargon nomenclatures are kind of just getting differentiated between the standards. But ideally, what we're talking about is identity provider and the service provider. Okay, so here the SAML authority is identity provider, and the SAML consumer service provider. Again, this identity provider is Okta, and service provider is the MuleSoft Anypoint platform. Just consider for that now. So ideally, we are talk through in terms of assertions. Okay, so what is assertion? So assertion is a package of information. So it will ideally have a subject about the user. Okay, and it will have all of the information that in terms of the authentication statement. It will have attribute statement, and also condition. There will be a lot of subsection under the assertions. Okay, that will just have a high level how these assertions will look like. Okay, but you have to consider there are 6 important elements in the assertion. Like, okay, first one is the issuer. The issuer is a unique identifier or an identity of the who's initiating this. Okay, before SAML 1.1, so before SAML 2.0, the 1.1 how it behaves is it kind of the identity provider itself directly provide the assertion. So which means that it will be initiated directly from the identity provider. Okay, but when it comes to 2.0, it will be initiated from the service provider. So whosoever is going to be the issuer, right, the initiator, so though they will be having the identity, so that will be covered in the issuer section. And then we have a signature section that will have a digital signature sign for the, it will be used to sign the assertion. for the security purpose. Also, there is a optional attribute that even you can encrypt your session. Okay, even the SAML section that that is visible, that will be still visible in terms of response, that could be kind of encrypted as well. That is again optional one for the people, to the org admin. And then there is a subject. So subject is the main information about the user, like an authenticate information about the end user. And then there's a condition which will say at what condition this particular assertion is valid, which mean probably it could be a time frame that okay, it will be valid from the 10 a.m. to the 11 p.m. So or it could be say that 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., which will be 30 minutes of validity to this assertion will be. And then there's authentication statement. It will say what type of authentication has been like made. It is a password for enforced authentication, or it could be a key authentication. So there will be a number of authentication. Those information will be saved. And when it comes to attribute statement, this attribute statement will have the information, information as in what are the key attributes, for example the name, email, and then if it is if there are any group scope, in terms of group to be mapped, so those informations will be part of this attribute statement. Okay, so this is kind of ideal structure of an any assertion. So for your purview, I'm just painting out a sample assertion here. So if you take a look, you could be seeing that this is a sample assertion. This is a sample 2.0. You have the issuer here, and then there's a signature information which will have the information about, and certain sensitive information are kind of hidden here. Okay, so which you can see. And then you have a subject section, okay, which is subject about the information of the end user. And then you have a condition section which will say the when this assertion will be valid. And then also it will have an under condition, it will also mention what the audience session, which means which audience it would be restricted for. Okay, not every service provider will access it, only the restricted an audience will access it. So that information also will be available here. And then there's an authentication statement. It will say that the password protected transport. And then you have an attribute statement about what type of that user is about, right? So those informations will be furnished in the SAML session. So when it comes to the architecture, okay, it's pretty much the same way what we have seen in the OpenID Connect. So see, the user doesn't know, begin in whether it is being the service provider and the identity provider is being communicated through SAML or OIDC. It doesn't matter for them. So as a user, I'm just going through the browser. I'm just going to access the MuleSoft. I want to have authentication through the Okta. I don't want to create or register a separate credential in MuleSoft. And it doesn't matter how for them, like whether it's going to be a SAML or OIDC. So let's take the same approach here. So as a user, I'm just going to wanted to sign up in Anypoint platform. So as soon as I do it, it kind of the service provider, which is a MuleSoft Anypoint platform, which kind of redirects me to the end provider, which is kind of first redirect to the browser. So the browser will again redirect to identity provider. So it is kind of a initial what we call as a HTTP redirect. Okay, so what it does is it kind of create a SAML authentication request. Okay, and that SAML authentication request will be part of a query parameter that will be included in the HTTP redirect URL, so which will be sent back to the identity provider. Okay, and in response, this identity provider will authenticate the user and the validate user, which means that this identity provider will again get me into a login page. Okay, and it will ask me to enter the user ID and password, and also it will take me consent that this service MuleSoft as a which is service provider wanted to take information out of it. I'll provide my consent. Once this is done, then it will make a HTTP post binding, which will be sending the SAML authentication response, which will have the complete assertion information. Okay, since it's a browser, it will be sending it as a XHTML. And once the browser receive it, it's it is going to make a call to a assertion consumer service URL, which is nothing but again a callback URL. It's kind of this architecture is pretty much similar to what you have seen in the OIDC. So it will send this assertion sample response back to this service provider, and it will process the security context, and then it will take the information, and then it will let the user to access the target resources. So that's how this architecture does. So let's go back to the demo again. So the very first step is we are going to create an application. So before creating application, just for your information, the same way you have to get through the access management here. Okay, so in the access management, instead of OpenID Connect, you have to select the you have to select the SAML 2.0. and these are the information you have to furnish. Okay, there are two options here. Okay, the option one would be you can get the IDP metadata, which will be the SAML metadata from the identity provider. You just need to import it. As soon as you import it, and it will be auto populated. Okay, that is one thing. And second one is uh, there are important attributes that the identity provider has to send, which is the name, as a name ID, which would be a subject. If you don't pass it, it will take your email ID as it is, and your first name, last name, and email. So these would be expected here. Okay, if the group attribute would be optional in terms, there's a group mapping to be done. So we'll see the group mapping as a next demo. Okay, so for now we just see how the SSO being enabled, through SAML enforcement, and then how user can be authenticated here. Okay, so also there is one more information that we have to pass to the identity provider, which is a audience URI. Okay, so which I'll show you what it is. So just take a look on these are the configurations. So the very first step is, again, you have to go and create a application here. So as you see, I've deleted all the configurations of whatever I've done for the OpenID Connect in the previous section. So let me just create a new one for now. So now I'm just going to say use SAML 2.0. So let me name it as Anypoint of the SAML. So here the single sign-on URL would be the the URL of Anypoint platform. This is which we call the assertion consumer service URL. But as of now, you don't have it. The reason is until you complete this configuration, you will not have it. So let's give a dummy URL for now. Okay, and then there's the audience URI as well. So the audience URI is the one that we need to say that it will be a organization id.anypoint.mulesoft.com. So the organization ID would be, you can take it in a couple of way. The more easiest way is you just go to the home page, you get the organization ID here. This is one way, or you can take the org ID, just navigating to the access management, just go to the business group, click the MuleSoft Mysore group, and here you'll be getting this, right? So there are two ways to do it, and let me just go to Okta. So first, let me type the paste this particular org ID followed with anypoint.mulesoft.com. Okay, these are preset configuration we have to do, and then there's a default relay status. So relay status is something it talk about the whether it be a token based or it could be a other mode of interaction. So we'll leave this information as it is for now, and then we just come back to the attribute statement. So as I mentioned, if you take a look on this SAML, this first name, last name, this thing important. So we have to map it. So where it is going to come from? So I'm just going to say that first name, and I have to map it from the so this would be the endpoint fields, and this would be the identity provider fields. Okay, so I've just added this information. You can also see, just take a look on the SAML assertion, how this is going to look like. So if you take a look, it says, your subject information. Okay, and then the conditions that I mentioned, like, what is the time limit of it, and then there is authentication, say the password protected transport, and then whatever the SAML attribute. So currently I configure first name, last name, so these will be part of your assertion response. Okay, and then let me click next. Let me finish this. So once I finish it, I can get this metadata. So let me just go to, so this is the metadata information. So instead of keying this URL one by one, let me just upload this file directly. So let me open a tab. So this is the IDP file, which has the signing certificate for the service provider to sign the authentication request. Also, the same certificate will be used by the service provider when the SAML authentication response received back from the identity provider, and it will verify the digital signature and then to process the accession. Okay, and then the name ID for everything, single sign-on URL, everything will be part of it. So let me just save this as metadata.xml. Okay, this is done. Now I'm going to create the configuration in the Anypoint platform. So let me click SAML 2.0. So here I'm just going to simply upload this metadata XML. As I upload it, you can see my sign-on URL is created, issuer ID is created, and the public key is created from the the metadata file. There are other couple of information I need to fill. So one is the name. So what I would do is the IDP SAML, and the sign off. Currently we're not discussing about the sign off, single sign off. So we are gonna just configure, get this information from here itself. So we'll keep this for now. Example, we'll configure it later. And the audience would be, as I mentioned, it should be the same as the org ID, and then follow the independent.MuleSoft.com, because MuleSoft platform, it's an audience for the Octa provider. So, and we can say as of now we'll just keep this as both the single sign-on initiation. Ideally, it will be from service provider to identity provider, but let's keep as as it for now. And this is a default one. We have already configured the Okta, the first name, last name, and email. You just click save changes, and this is done. So what I'm going to do, is there any step I missed? Okay, the next step would be, unlike the OIDC, okay, you have to assign the user. So currently, as I mentioned, my the user information is already like kind of account is already there. So I'm just going to assign this. So how do I going to assign this? And let me go to application. I click this. I can assign this. Assign to people. Now my user is associated. Okay, so this is done. Now the next step would be, let me just log out here. Let's just try the access. So now it is asking me whether you want to do a SSO through SAML. Yes. Sorry, one configuration I missed it. We have to update back this URL, right? This accession URL, which we missed it, right? So let me log in back. Let me log in back with the admin account. So let me go to the identity provider. So after this configuration done, this assertion consumer service URL will be auto populated. So you just need to copy this and then come back here. You just go to edit, next, here, copy this here. Okay, that's all. And then next, finish. So this is done. So now let me sign out. Probably let me show you the developer tools as well. The SAML assertion response rate. Let me see how this is gonna come now. So let me click this. Yes, my access is successful. So if you take a look, so initially, when I click this Okta SAML provider, right? So you just create a HTTP redirect binding, so which will be like the SAML request is kind of base 64 encoded, which is internally encrypted again, which will be sent part of query parameter. So this is from the Anypoint platform to the identity provider, which is Okta, okay, along with the signature and other information, okay. And then after the validation, you could see the using the assertion consumer service URL, there is a HTTP post call will be made from Okta to Anypoint platform, so that will be sending the SAML response. So since it's only digitally signed, we can kind of decode this. It's a base 64 decode. We'll be able to see this as well. Let me make it pretty for readable. One sec. Why it is not getting in? Okay. Language Excel. So this is a sample assertion response. What you can see now. So here you can see the sign of the signature information, all these things about the digital signature and the status of it. It says a success because the authentication record that has been passed from the service provider to the identity provider, and the identity provider validate the authentication request, and it's succeeded. After succession, it will provide an assertion details, so which has all the signature information at first, and then you have a subject information that I already mentioned, and the conditions. So if you look at the condition, how long the session is valid for me, between 9:27 to 9:37, which means 10 minutes. It provides me the validity of it. And then there's authentication statement. So it says the act of authentication through the password protect transport, and then the information of the attribute statement, which says my the name which I passed, the first name, last name, and the email ID. So this is assertion details. Okay. Now if you come back here, now I got the access. Okay, so now it's clear that we could be able to do SSO through either through SAML or through OpenID Connect. Okay, now I got the access. It's pretty much fine. But how do we access the component that I entitled to? Okay, for example, coming to Anypoint platform, it could be a API designer, or it could be API developer, or it could be org admin. But how do we get those access, right? So as I mentioned, the org admin just by default will have an access, so they would be like assign, they could be able to assign the access directly to the user, like adding the necessary permission, but that is not a recommended approach. So ideally, the permissions have to be segregated in terms of teams to define, okay, API developers should have these many access, like they should have access. These are limited access in the runtime manager and limited access in the API designer. And when it comes to the architect, they should have the access to design center. I mean, I'm just giving the variations. Okay, that could be a point of list that what are all the access and privileges to be given to the corresponding role. But that kind of a normalization segregation is required in terms of this access management. So as of now, the user authentication is successful, but how we can map that, the permissions, right? So for that, we'll see it now, right? So but before that, we just wanted to see why it is required. So let me just go back to the slide. So ideally, as I mentioned, like uh, we have n number of users in the Anypoint platform. Okay, and the roles would be pretty much different. Okay, one could be developer, one could be designer, or one could be a operation support person. So ideally, a team should be created. The team should be identified with the names, and the team should have a required permission dedicated for that team. And the org admin should not just go and add the user directly to the team. Okay, so it should be like since when the SSO is enabled, the group should be mapped. So which means that as part of this authentication process and authorization process, this information also should be passed, so that by default this access will be auto enabled for the users. Okay, so how we can do this is, like as I already mentioned, right? We have to just go back to the Anypoint platform. So let me just log out of this session. So let me get into the admin account. Okay, so now let me create some groups. So as admin, I'm just going to create a group, or we can ideally we call it a team here. So I'm going to say I'm going to create a team called API developer. Okay, the team is created, but what are all the permissions this particular team required? So I'm going to say that, okay, developer requires access to. So I'm just currently going to give a blanket access. I'm not going into granular access. So I'm just say that, okay, give access to the API manager, give access to design center, give full access to exchange, and give full access to runtime manager. So runtime manager, design center, API manager, and exchange have been added as the full permission have been added to this team under this root org Mysore Meetup, under the sandbox environment, and add permissions. Now this is done, right? So what would be the next step? Now I have to do the same thing in the other Okta provider as well. So here I already have a my user account that is created in this Okta service provider, I mean identity provider. Now I'm going to create a same group with the same name, and I'm just going to add my user to that. I'm just going to say that API developer. Yes, it is created, and I'm just going to add my user ID into this. So now you can see under API developer there's one people, which is my user ID. Also, I already created the application for SSO. I'm just going to assign that as application back here. Just going to click assign this Anypoint Okta SAML. Done. So this is done, and there is some couple of configurations that we still have to do in Okta as well as in Anypoint platform. Let me show you what those things. Now let me just go back to applications. Anypoint Okta SAML. In general, I'm just going to SAML settings. We have already added this, this user attributes, right? So now I'm just going to group attributes. I'm going to say that to be groups, and what would my group name is API developer. And remember, we are just trying, creating, we're just passing this, group information, but we are not talking about the permissions. It will be auto handle, it's kind of, handled internally in the Endpoint platform. Okay, so this identity provider doesn't know what sort of privileges that is being assigned for the API developer. Okay, so it will be initially, defined by the admin itself, part of the Endpoint platform. So you're just going to pass this. Okay, for this user is entitled to have access that's related to API developer. Okay, those only these information will be passed from the identity provider to the service provider, and service provider will determine so what are all the access for that group. Okay, so that's how this works. So and just added this information. Let me click next, finish it. Now I have to come back to Anypoint platform. So the team I have created, right? So that is this team I have to link to the Anypoint platform. So I have to mention what I would be getting the group name from. See, ideally the best practice you have to mimic the group name from the identity provider service provider. But if there is a change, as in like in terms of the name change, I mean there's a different naming convention that is being followed. You have to map it here. So since we follow the names, I'm just going to provide it API developer group name and Okta IDP sample. So I'm going to say this is a member of the group. Add it. Save changes. Okay, and the final configuration is on the identity providers. One sec. Let me take a look. Famous in step. So here I'm just going to say that groups, group attribute, save changes. So this is done. So there are just to recap on the configuration. The first configuration is in the identity provider you have to create a group. Okay, and then you have to add the necessary user out of it. But the very first step is in the Anypoint platform. You know, you have to first create the teams. Okay, and then you have to add the necessary permission for it. That's all. That's the very first step. And then come back to the identity provider. You create the same name of the group, and then add the necessary users should be part of that group. Okay, and then assign the group to the corresponding the SSO application. And once that is done, and just go back to the application. And just add the group attribute. What would be the the group name that will be passing? So these information to be configured, and then come back to Anypoint platform. The team that you have created, just had this external identity name, that what is going to come from the identity provider. And in the identity provider, just say what would be the group attribute. Okay, it will be groups. That's all. So only these things you are going to look for. Okay, so now the configuration is done. So now you're going to see that I'm going to do SSO login now, and it will also provide me the access to the component as the API developer, which means I'll be able to access design center, API manager, and the runtime manager. So let me just log out from the admin, and let me go to the domain URL. Now I'm going to say that continue with Okta IDP sample. Okay, my authentication is successful. I logged into Anypoint platform. Let me see whether I have an access to the runtime manager. Yeah, you can see I have access to runtime manager. I do have access to API manager and also design center. So this is how you can configure the SSO. So today we have seen kind of, I would say, on the high level, that how you can enable SSO and how you can map your group to the Anypoint platform. So that will also enable your corresponding privileges that you need as part of your access. So this is all about this session, and if there are any questions I can take up. I think we are already overrunning 15 minutes.
Thank you, Vijay. It's a nice, very nice session, informative session. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll wait for the questions
Yeah.
if anybody has any questions. And one more thing, just for the announcement that like we are already like towards the end of completing our 50th meetup, and we are planning to celebrate it in a bigger way. So we have planned to organize it in as a in person in two cities, that is Bangalore and Kolkata. So whoever like is part of already in these two cities, like you'll be able to see some news coming very soon. So we are planning